They broke all the rules and became kings in a man's world. From Perian Roberts, who reportedly moved 200 kilos of crack a month and making over $5 million in profits, to Tanya Smith, who outsmarted the FBI, and 80-year-old Doris Payne, who stole diamonds in Monte Carlo. These women ruled the streets with terror and an iron fist, but the question remains, what really happened to them? Avonda Dowling. Starting today's list is none other than the notorious Miami Queenpin, Avonda Black Girl Dowling. She was the ruthless leader of the Vodas gang, a crew that terrorized the streets of Miami and left a lasting mark on the city's underworld. Dowling has been linked to countless crimes, but the one that still sends chills down people's spines is the brutal turf war against the rival Bobby Boys gang, led by the equally infamous Kenneth "Bobby" Williams. It's believed that more than 60 lives were lost in this bloody feud that raged on for 5 years, leaving Miami residents living with their hearts in their mouths. In a world dominated by men, Dowling didn't just survive, she thrived. Some say she was even more dangerous than many of her male counterparts. Avonda's story begins in the poverty-stricken Overtown neighborhood of Miami. Growing up, she faced the harsh realities of racism, sexism, and economic struggle, and when the system offered her no way out, crime became the only door she could see to the life she dreamed of. She started building her name by affiliating with local gangs and mastering the dark arts of extortion, prostitution, and drug trafficking. But Dowling didn't stop there. She later aligned herself with the infamous Black Liberation Army and formed strategic ties with corrupt politicians and dirty cops. These connections gave her power, protection, and a wider grip on the criminal world. Through this ever-growing web of influence, she expanded her empire to include gambling, money laundering, and even murder-for-hire operations. She had a reputation for violence and was arrested several times for aggravated battery. Her mentor, Bunky Brown, helped shape her early rise, but when he was sentenced, Dowling didn't flinch. She took over completely. At her peak, it's believed she was pulling in $10,000 to $15,000 a day from drug deals alone. In 1982, she was linked to her first murder, a drug rival who was taken out with chilling precision. Her reign as a feared crime boss finally came to an end in November 2003 when she was arrested and sentenced to 20 years in prison. She walked out of prison on October 11, 2019, and some say she's a changed woman now. Her story was featured in Queenpins by Ron Chapisiuk, a book that details the lives of some of the most dangerous black women in the world of crime. Next up is a figure whose name once echoed through the streets of Detroit, a woman cloaked in power, fear, and undeniable influence, Ronda Hood, Big 50 of Detroit. They called her the Big 50 of Detroit, a woman feared in the streets and known to be a walking storm. Even after the cops caught up with her, Ronda Hood didn't fade away. She kept pushing and evolving. Born in 1966 on the east side of Detroit, Michigan, Hood was the eldest of 4 siblings. There are not any official records on her parents, but many believe their absence played a huge role in shaping who she became. Hood hit the streets early. As a young girl, she gravitated toward thugs and gang members. By 15, she was already a mother. Her first child, Rodney, was born that year. She started frequenting nightclubs and hanging out with strippers, and that's when she realized the kind of attention she drew. Men wanted her because of her looks, and she learned to use it to her advantage. As time passed, Hood got deeper into Detroit's underworld, meeting dangerous men who introduced her to the fast life, a life filled with drugs, crime, and high-stakes deals. It wasn't long before she built her own drug empire, and she was publicly recognized as one of the wealthiest women in Detroit's criminal scene. But like most crime stories, her sins eventually caught up with her. Hood was arrested and served about 2 years behind bars. When she got out, life had changed, and so had she. Not long after her release, she was diagnosed with sarcoidosis, a chronic illness that causes inflammation and painful lumps in organs, leading to fatigue and long-term damage. Today, Ronda Hood is writing a different story. No longer a queenpin, she's now using her voice to inspire. She hosts a radio show called Keeping It 100 with Big 50, where she speaks directly to young women about life, choices, and survival. She says the days of drugs and crime are behind her. Her net worth is estimated between $30 to $40 million, and she now lives in the suburbs of Detroit enjoying peace, purpose, and home decorating. But even as Detroit's streets whispered of one woman's dominance, Los Angeles harbored its own storm, just as deadly, just as unforgettable. Jiker Thompson, the crack queen of LA. The only reason the crack queen of LA, Jiker Thompson, was ever caught was because she had a weakness, her son. To this day, she holds the record for the longest prison sentence among the figures we've discussed so far. Jiker was born into hardship. At just 8 years old, she and her mother were evicted from their South Los Angeles apartment, their belongings carelessly thrown onto the street. Her path took a darker turn in high school when she began dating Anthony Daff Mosley, a ruthless marijuana dealer. Jiker served as both girlfriend and business manager, carefully recording all payments and transactions. But Jiker Jiker had ambitions of her own. She established her own drug operation, selling cocaine while still attending high school. Authorities reported that she moved 3 to 4 kilos every week in high school. In 1980, she married her high school sweetheart, and together they expanded into the crack cocaine market. Business flourished, bringing extraordinary wealth. The couple purchased a home in upscale Encino, California, and welcomed a son in 1982. Then tragedy struck. Daff was murdered by suspected rival gang members. Many thought this would be Jiker's wake-up call to leave the drug trade. Instead, she doubled down. By 1984, she was expanding her network, recruiting distributors across the country, and eventually sourcing cocaine directly from Colombian producers. At 26, she opened a hair distribution business, claiming it was legitimate, but authorities would soon prove that it was a front for laundering drug money. Her empire began crumbling when her business partner, Percy Cheese Bratton, was caught with kilos of cocaine. Facing serious charges, he made a deal with investigators to provide evidence against Jiker. Though she evaded capture for many months, her downfall came at age 31 when authorities arrested her at her son's 6th grade graduation ceremony. "Out of the love for my son, I came to his graduation, and when I came to his graduation, I was arrested," she said. "It was the worst feeling that any mother could feel, for their child to see them get arrested. The worst feeling." She faced charges of conspiracy to distribute cocaine and 5 counts of money laundering. Convicted, she served 12 years of a 15-year sentence. Prison transformed her life. Jiker converted to Christianity and later established Second Chance Evangelical Ministries. According to her, Jesus saved her life, and her time in prison felt so light because she had given her life to Christ. Today, her son is a professional skateboarder. Up next is a force from Philadelphia, elegant on the surface but with a storm behind her smile, Thelma Wright. Most drug lords come from poor backgrounds, but Thelma Wright's story is different. Raised in a caring and wealthy Catholic home in Philadelphia, a woman got pulled into crime not because she was desperate, but because she fell in love with a man involved in the city's dangerous drug world. Jackie Wright wasn't just any man. He was one of Philadelphia's major drug players, a top heroin wholesaler with connections to the Black Mafia, a ruthless street gang notorious for killing police officers. Despite his dangerous background, Thelma married Jackie, and in 1982, they welcomed their first child, Jackie. Their family life was short-lived. Just 4 years later, tragedy struck when Jackie was murdered. His body was found with a gunshot wound to the head, rolled up in a rug. The young widow faced a crucial decision: start life over on the straight and narrow or take over the family business. Circumstances pushed her toward the latter. By the early 90s, Thelma had built an impressive operation. Her organization stretched beyond Philadelphia, with networks throughout the United States, overseeing large shipments of cocaine and heroin between Los Angeles and Philadelphia. Her success in the drug trade earned her nicknames like the Boss Lady and Queen Pin. The money allowed her to provide for her son, but this wasn't the life she had envisioned. The danger became all too real in July 1991 when Thelma and her friends were caught in a gangland shootout at Studio West, a popular nightclub. Less than 2 weeks later, she was dodging bullets after a drug deal went wrong. These near-death experiences became her wake-up call. By the end of 1991, Thelma decided to leave the drug game behind for good. For years, Thelma stayed out of the public eye, keeping her past hidden. In 2009, she redirected her life to helping others, working for a nonprofit managing properties for women struggling with addiction and mental health issues. Finally, in 2011, Thelma decided to share her story by publishing a memoir titled "With Eyes from Both Sides: Living My Life, In and Out of the Game." Today, she enjoys a quiet life as a mother and grandmother, far removed from her dangerous past. "When I go around and I speak to people, I'm letting them know that you need to stay away from this game. You're not going to win. It is a no-win. 2 options, death or jail. That's it. There's nothing else." Thelma Wright, former crime boss. But while Wright chose peace, another figure stayed in an active motion of terror in Compton, South Central Los Angeles: Sylvia Rambo Nun. Violence was a family inheritance for Sylvia Rambo Nun. She was born in Compton, but her family relocated to the east side in the 1950s. Growing up, she lived in the shadow of her older brother Marcus China Dog Nun, one of the founding members of Leaders Park Peru, which is one of Compton's most notorious gangs. The Nun household normalized danger. Both parents were feared drug dealers, and guns were as common as furniture. Her father personally guided Sylvia's hands as she fired her first shots. In 1973, police dragged her father away to face charges. Then 6 years later, her brother China Dog was shot by Compton Crips. This was when Nun decided to join the Pirates. Though her brother survived in critical condition, the shooting incident cemented her path. By the 1980s, as crack cocaine swept through Los Angeles, Nun developed a routine of using drugs before embarking on gang missions. Her reputation grew until she became one of the most feared women on Compton streets. Everything changed in April 1991 when she discovered a warrant for her arrest. Cooperating with law enforcement, she managed to avoid serious consequences, but tragedy struck struck again that July when her oldest brother Junior was shot and killed while walking with his girlfriend. This loss forced her to relocate to Las Vegas in 1993, where she met former Kansas City Sheriff John Hardman, who would become her husband. There, Nun joined a Christian church and dedicated her life to Jesus Christ. She continued her spiritual journey until her death on April 20th, 2010. Her legacy lives on through the Sylvia Nun Angels, the nonprofit founded by her sister Cynthia Nun, which focuses on gang intervention and continues to serve the Compton community where it all started. Now to a drug queen with 30 years of dominance in the game, Perian Roberts.
I just got to a point where I had reached a height that no one else had, and no one else could even get to where I had as long as I had. And I just got bored.
Perian Roberts had barely finished high school when she entered the criminal underworld. Her life changed, of course, after meeting a man called Champ at a local teenage nightclub. Though 4 years her senior, Roberts was immediately drawn to him, not knowing he would introduce her to the drug trade. Initially, Champ and his cousins made their living by breaking into businesses at night, creating holes in walls to steal merchandise. When these burglaries stopped bringing in enough money, he shifted to selling marijuana throughout Alabama and its suburbs. Roberts was forced into a supporting role where she handled the sizing, weighing, and packaging of drugs. She maintained that she never worked the streets with Champ. Everything changed when Champ shot a difficult customer during an altercation. His arrest and imprisonment created a vacuum that Roberts stepped into. As she took control of the operation, Roberts quickly earned both fear and respect from her associates. The drug money transformed her life, bringing her incredible wealth. Her business expanded dramatically after connecting with a member of a Mexican cartel. Reports suggest that she was moving between 200 kilos of cocaine weekly, generating over $5 million monthly. At the height of her criminal career, Roberts earned the nickname Black Widow after successfully evading murder charges. Her turning point came in her early 30s when she grew tired of constantly looking over her shoulder. Roberts prayed for a way out that wouldn't lead to violence or retribution. 2 weeks later, she was arrested in a parking lot. Convicted on drug trafficking charges, Roberts received a 21-year sentence but served only 2 years after receiving a pardon from the Alabama Board of Pardons and Parole, what she considers the second chance she prayed for. Today, Roberts shares her story, hoping to warn others from following her former path into the drug business. Now, to a drug queen who could pass for your everyday neighbor, Charmaine Roman. To the outside world, Charmaine Roman looked like any other Florida grandmother, but behind closed doors, she was anything but ordinary. Roman was secretly a major player in a Jamaican drug trafficking ring, laundering millions of dollars and operating as the key woman behind the scenes. Not much is known about her early life. She was born on July 4th, 1971 in Jamaica and raised in Central Village, a rough high-crime area in St. Catherine Parish. That environment likely shaped her path. As she climbed the ranks of the drug world, Roman tried to keep a low profile. She made it difficult for authorities to figure out exactly what she did for a living. Still, law enforcement had their eyes on her. Despite her secret life, Roman lived with a touch of flash. She drove a Land Rover, lived in a stylish condo, and loved to gamble. Her illegal earnings even helped her raise her grandson. According to the Orlando Sentinel, Roman, then 42, handled the finances for a violent crime ring in Florida. She laundered around $3 million through the Wynn Casino in Las Vegas, using gambling as a cover. But while gambling was just a hobby, it was the drug trade that paid the bills. After years of surveillance, police finally caught up with her on September 30th, 2013. She was arrested in an Orlando parking lot while overseeing the delivery of a 400-pound shipment of marijuana. Her arrest was part of a larger sting operation called Operation Warehouse 13. In total, 51 people were arrested. Authorities seized 3,200 pounds of marijuana, $200,000 in cash, 15 guns, and several vehicles. Prosecutors say the group was responsible for trafficking thousands of pounds of marijuana into Central Florida, often using violence to get business done. For Roman, it was the end of the road. At the time of her arrest, she had multiple cell phones, several passports with different names, 4 Florida ID cards, social security cards, credit cards, and birth certificates. Authorities also discovered that she had been living in the U.S. illegally for 20 years. To this day, they still can't confirm her real identity. Up next, we have the queen of the streets of Harlem, Tanya Miss T. Taylor. It's the late 1980s and early 90s in the streets of Harlem, New York, and one name reigned supreme: Tanya Miss T. Taylor. Feared, respected, and widely recognized, Taylor grew to become one of the most notorious drug dealers in American crime history, trafficking everything from crack cocaine to heroin. Working alongside some of the most dangerous dealers of her time, Taylor built and scaled multiple high-level drug operations that left an unforgettable mark on Harlem's underworld. Her journey into crime began too early. At just 16 years old, Taylor was already selling angel angel dust straight out of her Louis Vuitton purse on 123rd Street and 7th Avenue. By 20, she was leading her own drug empire. In a revealing interview with Madame Noir, Taylor opened up about her criminal past, her modest family roots, and the work she's doing now to help others avoid the same path. Despite having a solid upbringing, loving parents, a good education, and a moral foundation, the pull of the streets proved too strong for her. The fast money, the adrenaline, and the power led her into circles filled with thugs and crack addicts. For years, she ruled the streets and remarkably never served a prison sentence, even during the peak of her operations in the 90s. Her turning point came after her brother was shot. That moment shook her. She moved down south, determined to leave the game for good. It wasn't easy, and this took years, but the pain of losing her brother kept her grounded in her decision to change. Today, Tanya Taylor is a completely different woman. She dedicates her life to helping others, especially veterans and the mentally ill, providing homes, support, and guidance until they're able to live independently. She's also passionate about mentoring youth. As she puts it, their minds are still impressionable, and she's doing everything she can to reach them before the streets do. Now to the crime queen who fooled the FBI, Tanya Smith. It started with an obsession to meet Michael Jackson, and it ended with fleecing U.S. banks for millions and being labeled a one-woman crime wave. Tanya Smith is that rare criminal on today's list who outsmarted the FBI. In 1981, an FBI agent laughed in her face and told her, "Negroes rob and murder, but they don't pull of sophisticated crimes." That was all she needed. Fueled by hurt and the hunger to prove them wrong, Tanya transformed her obsession into criminal mastery. She started with the phone company before moving on to banks. By carefully calling extensions, asking strategic questions, and collecting information crumbs, Tanya learned to navigate bank systems with ease. By age 22, she could wire $250,000 in a single day, and the banks never suspected a thing. She lived like royalty in LA. Rolls Royces, Rodeo Drive shopping sprees, wine at Mr. Chow, and $500 valet tips. But the lavish lifestyle couldn't last forever. In 1985, a careless accomplice led the feds to her doorstep. Yet even then, Tanya escaped conviction by blaming her identical twin sister. No one could tell them apart. Eventually, justice caught up. She went to prison, escaped, got caught again, had a child behind bars, lost all her millions. Perhaps the most interesting thing about Tanya Smith's case is that she carefully documented every heist she pulled off. By her own records, she stole over $40 million, far more than the fraction authorities ever managed to prove. Now, after decades of silence, Tanya is revealing her methods in her memoir, Never Saw Me Coming. In the end, Tanya Smith believes she didn't just scam banks, she humiliated the very system that swore she wasn't smart enough to beat it. But even as Tanya danced circles around the banks, another figure was securing her place in the shadows of America's most notorious crime families, Tanessa Welch. Decorated as the first lady of the Black Mafia family, Tanessa Welch brought disgrace to her family by the path she chose. Not many remember this, but the Black Mafia family was a notorious drug trafficking and money laundering organization founded by Demetrius Big Meech Flannery and his brother Terry Southwest T. Flannery. They always left a trail of destruction. Welch was born in a middle-class family and brought up on the west side of Detroit. She had 3 siblings, and they lived together with her mother and stepfather. The family made a decent living working in the auto company, but Welch was different. She wanted different. At the age of 19, she had her first child out of wedlock. The father was her high school sweetheart. They later broke up, and she ended up being a single mother. Anyway, her life dramatically changed after she went to a night party. This was where she was introduced to the world of drugs. She met Harold, a drug dealer with charm, money, and access to a world she'd only seen from afar. Welch was hooked, and within months, she was in the game. She helped Harold expand their operations to the west side, and as she predicted, their profits exploded. Harold's decision to recruit the Flannery brothers, Big Meech and Southwest T, would ultimately create BMF, one of America's most notorious drug organizations. Her relationship with Harold eventually spiraled into violence. He wouldn't stop abusing her until she stabbed him in the chest in self-defense. This landed her in prison while he survived. She was later released, and Harold would make another attempt on her life. This continued until the FBI finally dismantled the Black Mafia family. While the Flannery brothers received 30-year sentences, Tanya pleaded for 7 years. Surprisingly, the judge saw her as a victim of circumstance and reduced her sentence to 57 months. She was released in 2012, while Southwest T received compassionate release during COVID-19 in 2020. Prison changed Tanessa Welch completely. Her first prison job was in the chapel, and this was where she got connected to God even more. Today, Tanessa is a mother of 2 sons, one from her high school romance and another with Harold. Sources estimate her current net worth to be around $1 million. Up next, we have the drug queen of Baltimore, Jean Brown. Many know her as the Queen of Baltimore, and her story might be the only one so far without a happy ending. The tale of Jean Brown began with a drug empire that stretched from Jamaica to Baltimore, but it ended with bodies in dumpsters and an execution on foreign soil. She was a criminal mastermind who turned drug operations into murder enterprises. Not much is known about her early life, but by the time she was 43, she had established dominance and fear on the streets of both Jamaica and the U.S. through her multi-million-dollar drug business. Brown ran the drug operations with her boyfriend, Carl Smith. They used trucking companies to transport marijuana from suppliers in Arizona and California to distributors in Maryland, Pennsylvania, and New York. Starting in 2000, the trucks made the trip once or twice a month, each carrying around 1,000 pounds of marijuana per load. Together, they were pulling in about $1 million every month tax-free. The money was smuggled to Jamaica by couriers and invested in real estate by Brown and her relatives. She was enjoying the game until she started spilling blood. In 2009, after suspecting Michael Knight of stealing drug money, Brown didn't just cut him off. She had him kidnapped, tortured, murdered. His dismembered body was found scattered across dumpsters in Baltimore County's Lock Raven and Liberty Road areas. But the bloodshed didn't stop there. By April 2010, her sights were set on a new target, her former boyfriend, Carl Smith. Smith wanted out, but Brown warned him that it was too late. When he didn't back down, she had co-conspirators lure him to Tijuana, Mexico, far from U.S. jurisdiction. There, her hitman executed Smith with a single shot to the head. Eventually, law enforcement began connecting the dots between the murders and Brown's drug empire. One by one, her associates fell. Soon after, Brown herself was arrested and found guilty of kidnapping and murder in aid of racketeering. In March 2013, a U.S. district judge sentenced her to life in prison. Up next, we have Crime Queen. With over 60 years of a criminal career, Doris Payne. While she was not a crime boss or a drug queen, Doris Payne was a thief like you've never seen before. Her 7-decade career of jewel theft stands out as one of the most persistent crime sprees in American history. Born in the rugged coal mining community of Slab Fork, West Virginia, Doris Payne emerged from poverty to establish herself as America's most enduring jewelry thief. For over 60 years, Payne targeted high-end jewelry stores with a simple but effective technique. She'd enter dressed elegantly, charm the sales associates, and ask to see multiple items at once. In the confusion, Doris pocketed the most valuable piece and calmly walked out. Her most famous heist took place in Monte Carlo in the 1970s, where she stole a 10-carat diamond ring worth $500,000. Though caught and extradited to Monaco, authorities eventually had to release her after 9 months when they couldn't find the stolen gem. Perhaps the most interesting thing about Payne's story is her persistence. While most criminals slow down with age, Payne kept stealing well into her 80s. At 80, she was caught stealing a $1,300 Burberry coat. At 83, she was arrested for stealing a $22,500 diamond ring. At 87, she was caught shoplifting from Walmart while wearing an ankle monitor from a previous arrest. Throughout her criminal career, Payne used at least 20 aliases, 10 different social security numbers, and 9 different birth dates. She never used violence or threats, just confidence, charm, and sticky fingers. Her life was eventually documented in the film The Life and Crimes of Doris Payne, where she openly discussed her methods and career. While she faced numerous arrests and jail time, Doris famously stated that she didn't regret stealing, she only regretted getting caught. Up next, we have another drug queen whose death brought jubilation and wild celebrations on the streets of Wentworth, south of Durban. Simone Jasmine. Moni, as she was known on the streets of Wentworth, was introduced to gang life by a boyfriend. Jasmine's favorite nickname, Queen of the South, was inspired by a popular Mexican telenovela, which many observers noted seemed to mirror her life. Her story was strikingly similar to that of Teresa Mendoza, the main character of Queen of the South, who comes from a poor background and falls in love with a drug cartel member. Just as in the show, Moni soon began trading drugs, and after the death of her boyfriend, she went on to date 3 other gangsters, all of whom were killed in the ongoing drug wars in the Wentworth community. This earned her the nickname Black Widow. Those who knew her described her as a tomboy who used gangster slang and dressed the part. The money she made from the trade made her incredibly wealthy, but as with many other drug queens, her life became even more complicated when she sparked a gang war. Moni's gang killed a prominent member of a Umladzi gang linked to the taxi industry, dumping his body in a field. In retaliation, the Umladzi gang opened fire on Monk's flat with AK-47s, mistakenly believing that she and her crew were inside. She narrowly escaped, but that was not the end of it. In the months that followed, Moni lived in constant fear, always looking over her shoulder. She took extreme precautions like never using her vehicles, having others book her e-hailing rides, and avoiding routines to stay off the radar. However, her past finally caught up with her when someone else booked her an Uber from a Durban hospital. Assassins, who had reportedly been staking out her home for days, ambushed her. According to a detective at the scene, she was shot at least 6 times, twice in the chest, 3 times in the stomach, and once in the leg. The police struggled to identify the Zodiac Killer, as many people had wanted her dead. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Please check out more interesting videos from the cards on the screen.